The Alaska Mountain Wilderness Classic is a hard thing to explain to people. For more than 40 years now, some of the best wilderness adventurers in the world have gotten together every summer to challenge themselves in one of the toughest events on Earth. The goal of the Classic? Cross an entire Alaskan mountain range in less than a week under your own power. The rules are simple. No supply drops, no motors or pack animals, no walking on roads, and no outside support. There are no checkpoints, no aid stations, no waivers, and no prizes. The courses range from short at 120 miles to well over 200, and are almost exclusively off-trail wilderness travel. I personally have been nothing short of obsessed with the Classic for a number of years now. As an Alaskan whose passion is big wilderness adventures, I knew it was something I needed to do from the moment I first read about it. I also knew that I would need to choose my partner wisely, and that there was no one in the world I would rather have than my little brother Nate. Nate was only 14 or 15 when I first brought up the idea of doing the Wilderness Classic with him. He enthusiastically agreed to participate, although we both knew we would need to wait a few years. Despite being 7 years younger than me, he and I have already shared more adventures before either of us turned 25 than many people will experience in their entire lifetimes. In late summer of 2022, Nate and I embarked on our biggest expedition yet. We spent 7 days traveling more than 170 miles through Alaska's Brooks Range by foot and pack raft, along the Ribden and Ivashak rivers. It was an amazing experience that left us feeling empowered to tackle all kinds of wilderness adventures. It also gave us the confidence to request special permission for Nate to participate in the 2023 Alaska Mountain Wilderness Classic as a 17-year-old. Our request was approved. The 42nd annual Alaska Mountain Wilderness Classic traveled from Mentasta Lake to McCarthy, crossing the entire Wrangell Mountain Range. Starting in Mentasta Lake, we would journey south along the Little Toke River and over Noyes Pass. From here, we hoped to float Platinum Creek to the Nebezna River before hiking over Cooper Pass towards the abandoned mining settlement of Jasanaw. Next, we would travel east along the northern edge of the Wrangells to the White River before abruptly turning south to cross Skolai and Chittistone Passes. After defeating the harrowing and famous Goat Trail, we would follow the Chittistone River downstream to Glacier Creek before inflating our pack rafts and floating to the May Creek Road. It would then be a 9-mile hike to the finish in McCarthy. In total, the route would encompass nearly 200 miles of off-trail wilderness travel, with at least 150 of those miles being hiking.
Your check. Yes, sir. Okay. Hit it. All right. Let's rock and roll. Pack raft.
Nate arrived almost a week prior to the start of the Classic, so we would have time to prep. We spent hours laboring over the food and gear we should bring, to the point of measuring out individual calories for the trip on a day-by-day basis. Yeah, made the decision not to bring a sleeping bag due to weight concerns, but our packs are right at the 38-pound mark. We have opted instead to go with more food. We were both eager for the pre-race dinner. It was a great opportunity to discuss last-minute gear and route decisions, as well as to meet the legendary adventurer Dick Griffith himself. Nate and I were fortunate to have an amazing support crew with my wife Becca and her parents, Dean and Sandra. They volunteered to drive us to the start and finish of the Classic, a tall feat involving more than 20 hours of driving for them. Dean also volunteered to be our in-town rescue coordinator if something went wrong on our trip, and for that, I am deeply grateful.
Alright, so it is the night before the Alaska Mountain Wilderness Classic, so pretty excited. Very nervous. We'll see how it goes. Everybody, all the competitors except for a couple, are here at the gravel pit tonight. And so tomorrow morning at 8:30 or at 9:30, we will all line up in front of a dirt line on the road and start walking. So we'll see how it goes. Just gonna try to get some sleep right now. I mean, obviously it's July 2nd or July 1st right now. So a lot of daylight, not much night per se, but we'll see how sleeping goes and see what happens in the following days.
Tensions were high in camp the night before the start of the race. Roughly half of the 18 participants were rookies, but everyone present had long resumes of wilderness adventures. Most, like Nate and I, had been dreaming of this moment for years. We had all studied the route in detail while paying attention to every ounce that went into our Dyneema backpacks. We all knew what we were about to do would be unbelievably hard, though none of us truly knew what to expect.
Ready to start. A little chaotic.
Questions poured through my head as the time to begin drew close. But the opportunity for answering them had passed. In fact, there was only one thought that would really matter for the next 6 days. Keep moving forward.
3, 2, 1, go! Everyone! Woo! Bye, love you.
Bye, dudes. Bye, Heather. Thanks for having me, Heather. 9:42 and we are off. A horde of psychos. Starting off on the ATV trails here. A little less than a mile in. Start of the 2023 Wilderness Classic.
The first section of our route involved hiking along the Little Toke River to its headwaters. From there, we would cross a series of 3 passes to descend into the Platinum Creek drainage.
Four and a half hours in, right at 15 miles. Traveling is still going really, really good. Yeah, just moving pretty efficiently still. And feeling good. It's really warm, which I will say does beat it being super miserably cold and rainy, but we're pretty hot. Honestly, can't complain though. Weather's awesome. Trails, absolutely gorgeous. Excellent. Can't complain.
We started out at an aggressive pace thanks to a system of muddy ATV trails. But by mid-afternoon, the trails gave way to alpine tundra and endless river crossings. It was during these first few hours of the trip that we began to play leapfrog with a pair of other participants, Jay Cable and Dr. Pete Delamere. Pete is a physics professor at the University of Alaska Fairbanks who is also a rookie this year. Jay, however, was embarking on his 5th Wilderness Classic. I had actually read Jay's blog for several years prior to meeting him on the course, including gleaning a lot of information from his Nebezda to McCarthy trip report in preparation for this race. We had no way of knowing it on the first day, but these two would ultimately play a significant role in our success.
Nine hours in. I go way up there, but considering we've come from behind this mountain back over here, behind the far mountains over there. I think we're doing okay.
All right, we are 30 miles in on day 1, and we still have probably 10 miles to go before we're done with the pass. Just had dinner and feel a lot better after that.
A little over 15 hours in, 40-ish miles. Kind of the dark part of the day, 1 a.m. Getting ready to go over the last pass. Finally get into Platinum Creek. "40 miles in a day is nuts. It's a long, long way to walk. But as Nate said, the suffering makes the beauty meaningful. The beauty makes the suffering bearable. That is definitely the theme of the Wilderness Classic.
Our first day, we hiked nearly 38 miles in just over 16 hours, climbing almost 5,000 vertical feet. It was already the most intense day of hiking either of us had ever experienced, and it was only day 1. Our goal for the second day was to cross all the way to Cooper Pass, another full 40 miles away. After 4 hours of sleep, we got up to make our way down Platinum Creek.
It's now, what time is it? 7:45. We slept until about 7. So a little less than 5 hours of sleep when you factor in setting up the tent and our place to sleep. Trying to break camp as fast as possible and get moving. Feet are in better shape than we were worried they were. Wound up doing about 38 miles or so yesterday. So got a long ways to go today. Hopefully less than 10 miles before we make floatable water, but we'll see how it goes.
Jay and Peter up ahead of us there. Nate trucking along. We're doing like 3 miles an hour again. Such a gorgeous day, and no bugs for now. All right, a little over 24 hours into this thing, and 44-ish miles. Feeling good. Got a couple miles to the Soda Creek confluence. And hopefully from Soda Creek we'll be able to float at least most of the way to the Nabesna River.
Teams that completed the course the previous year warned us about Platinum Creek. It was shallow but fast, with countless river-wide sweepers. An unexpected Class 3 canyon made the descent an exciting but dangerous endeavor.
Just showing a pretty good representation of Platinum Creek here. Big bend, fast river. And this is definitely not one of the hard sections. There's been a lot of challenges. I'm very happy we have dry suits. Honestly, it's a lot of fun, but there was one section with just non-stop blind corners, Class 3 pool drops, like for half a mile. But we're about 3 miles from the Nabesna River. Hopefully it's gonna mellow out a little bit here and not just keep getting more and more woody.
The Nabesna itself was a massive tangle of braided channels nearly 2 miles wide in places. By late afternoon though, we had successfully crossed it and were ready to start up the next drainage.
Made it across the Nabesna. It's not sure exactly what time it is, about 6-ish I think. Gone about 26 or so miles today. Platinum Creek was a bit of a pain at times, but overall it looked very brushy on the banks. So we're now over at Cooper Creek and got solid at least probably 6 to 8 hours of hiking up there tonight. So
Cooper Creek proved to be exceptionally difficult. The terrain was extremely rocky and the creek was cold and swift. By this point, we had already covered nearly 75 miles in only 36 hours. It became a mental game of trying to maintain the forward progress we knew we needed while battling the most intense fatigue we had ever experienced.
Well, it's 12:45 a.m. and we're still walking. Haven't made it as far as we wanted to today, but we're making progress. We are on the far side of Blue Lake. Covered a little over 40 miles today in 17 hours. Feeling pretty wiped. We were barely able to walk in a straight line. What a butt kicker of a day.
By the time we stopped at Blue Lake, we were exhausted to the point of beginning to hallucinate. After only a few more hours of rest, we got up to finish crossing Cooper Pass. Our route for day 3 would entail floating a few miles on Notch Creek, followed by a long slog to the mostly abandoned mining town of Chisana. From there, we would head up Geohinda Creek as far as possible, before once again stopping to sleep for a few hours.
Alright, 9 a.m. on day 3, so we're just shy of 48 hours in. About 5 hours of sleep again last night. Up there is the pass to the Chisana River, hopefully 5 miles or so of hiking, then 5 to 7 miles of floating. Should get us towards Cross Creek. I mean, we're tired, obviously. We're about 80 miles into this thing right now, in under 48 hours. But feet are holding up, even if they are a bit battered. So far, no major concerning injuries or anything like that. It's just maintaining energy levels for something that's this physical. So, and I mean, we've only got 10 hours of sleep so far total for the trip. Crossing the pass, Cooper Pass right here, about 20-ish miles to Chisana now. All right, 6 o'clock right now on day 3. About 9 hours into our day today, and not as far as we'd like to be, roughly 22 miles, but making do. Sun is really pretty right now. We're on the horse trail between Cross Creek and Chisana. Hopefully just a couple miles out of Chisana now. So keeping on. Just crossed the 100-mile mark for the entire trip, which is pretty cool. And we're now over halfway. So yeah, feeling good about finishing.
By late afternoon, we had made it to the silty channels of the Chisana River. Our bodies were holding up okay, but we began to realize that our original 5-day goal was becoming less and less realistic.
"8:30 on day 3, and we're in Chisana. Well, sort of outskirts. Got a mile left to the airstrip and the cabin. Past Chisana now. About 30 or so miles in, we're on Geohinda Creek, but I think we're gonna push really hard tonight.
After 36 miles of travel, we finished our day halfway up Geohinda. Day 4 would involve hiking past the historic Solo Mountain Emergency Shelter to Skolai Glacier. We had now traveled well over 100 miles and were beginning to feel the effects on our bodies. We were over halfway through, but it was obvious that the remaining miles would not come easily.
My heel is definitely giving me some fits, which sucks because we still have 40 miles of hiking. But we are pushing 2/3 of the way done total. So it feels really good to have made it this far.
The hiking above Geohinda Creek was stunning. Beyond Solo Cabin, though, lay miles of alder-choked swamps. Affectionately dubbed the escape from Solo, dragging ourselves through this section became nothing short of an exercise in mental fortitude.
Emotionally, a bit of a low point for us. It's taking a lot longer than we thought it would to get places, and we're both pretty exhausted. But man, that view.
During this time, we went back and forth a lot with Jay and Pete. Sometimes they would be in front, sometimes we would. At one point, Jay asked if we had experienced our moment of transcendence yet. I thought it was a bit of a dumb question at the time. I was just in too much pain to think about that. Lime Creek is a major tributary of the White River that blocked our path to Skolai Glacier. Though normally it can be waded carefully, the sunny weather of the previous few days had caused it to become extremely swollen and dangerous. We wound up having to travel miles downstream with Jay and Peter to find a safe place to cross, ultimately costing us 3 hours to gain barely half a mile. The obstacle was a new low point for me, and for the first time I began to question whether we would actually finish. Roughly 145 miles in, some of the greatest challenges of the entire classic still loomed above us. From our camp, we would first have to negotiate our way around the Skolai Glacier. Then, the highest pass of the entire trip would have to be crossed. But beyond that lay arguably the most famous obstacle of the entire route, the Goat Trail. This historic path carries intrepid hikers on a faint line through loose gravel slopes, thousands of feet above the Chittistone Canyon. Even after descending from the Goat Trail, we would still have to cross the Chittistone River and follow it for nearly 10 miles before being able to inflate our pack rafts at Glacier Creek. By this point, tendinitis and damaged toes caused both of us to walk with a visible limp. Nonetheless, we set out into the brilliant sunshine to honor our commitments to each other and finish what we had started.
Nate coming up through the gnarliest section of the course we've had so far. This stuff is so brutal, trying to get around the glacier. Getting pretty close to the top of Chittistone. It's about 6:45. We are way behind schedule. It's been a long day. I think our tiredness has made us make some route finding errors. Nothing too huge, but it's added time for sure.
As we forged ahead that evening, we passed Jay and Peter camped just before the trail became technical. They warned us that a fall in the upcoming section would certainly be fatal. Driven by a desire to cover more miles that evening, we thanked them and pressed on. But moments later, hundreds of feet above the canyon, my foot completely slipped in the loose gravel and I was forced to catch myself by my trekking poles. It remains the closest call I have ever had. Rightly shaken by the near miss, Nate and I found a small ledge somewhat protected from rockfall and curled up on it to rest. After shivering in a space blanket for a few hours, we rose at 3 a.m. to tackle the orange scree of the goat trail. The finish seemed in sight now. We just had to get there alive.
All right, it's about 3 a.m. We're about to start the goat section of the goat trail. Back behind me, we stopped and slept for 3 hours just to make sure that our reaction times and stuff like that were somewhat reasonable before attempting one of the more dangerous sections of the route. I'm just gonna go really super slow, hope that the trail is pretty obvious, and we'll see you on the other side. Hard to appreciate just how beautiful this place is when you're in this much pain, but it is amazing.
By this point in the trip, our bodies were utterly broken. But the Classic doesn't care how tired you are, it makes you earn every step. The warm weather of the past days had made every stream crossing a brutal challenge. Once off the goat trail, Nate and I were forced to travel 2 miles upstream along the Chittistone River to cross it. Even then, it was with great difficulty.
Finally crossed the Chittistone. It took hours and was probably one of the scariest things we've done on the entire trip. So we have like 20 miles of hiking left and our feet are hamburger. But it is what it is. We've made it this far. It's still only like 11 o'clock in the morning. So yeah, it's gonna be a long day, but we are going to finish the Wilderness Classic.
With less than 10 miles left to Glacier Creek, finishing that day seemed all but certain. Or at least, so we thought. Toby Creek is a glacial stream only 3 miles above Glacier Creek. After all we had been through, it was the last major obstacle we faced, and it turned out to be impassable.
We We are stuck at the last creek crossing of the trip. We're running low on food. I just want to be done so bad, but it's at flood stage and it's just, you can hear it just sending boulders down. There's no way to cross with a pack raft. It's just too high and too dangerous. We're gonna try to find some fresh water, set up a camp, sleep, and get up. We'll probably get up at about 12:30 a.m. and see if the water level comes down in the dark enough for us to cross, and if it does, we will book it to Glacier Creek, get in, and then take out at the May Creek Road Bridge.
Sleep deprived and utterly exhausted, the disappointment of being shut down so close to the finish simply broke me. I knew that in McCarthy, Becca and her parents anxiously awaited our arrival. Without cell service, they had no way of knowing what was taking us so long and if we were okay. Left with no other options, Nate and I pitched our tarp for shade and caught up on some much-needed rest. A few hours later, Peter and Jay arrived and camped next to us.
Jay and Peter caught up to us, and they are probably going to try to cross with us at around midnight, 1 o'clock tomorrow morning. Yeah, there's definitely a low point earlier tonight, but we'll make the best out of it.
As humbling as it was to admit, Nate and I were very grateful to have other people with us at this point. We were tired, hurting, and honestly scared. But when water levels dropped 2 feet in an hour the next morning, all 4 of us wasted no time in charging towards Glacier Creek and the finish.
Made it to the May Creek Road takeout. Pretty grueling 9-mile hike back, but we are almost done.
May Creek Road was a slog, but it was the final slog. There were no more rivers, no more canyons, and no more mountain passes. We realized that people back home would simply not be able to understand what we had experienced, no matter how hard we tried to explain it to them. But we knew what we had done. And after 6 days, 8 hours, and 14 minutes, we crossed the finish line to McCarthy.
We did it! Yes, we made it to McCarthy.
Coming home took more time than just the long drive from McCarthy. Trying to get back to normal life after an experience like that was surprisingly difficult. The Classic had been a deeply humbling journey. It had asked more of us than I ever thought possible, and pushed us to the absolute breaking point. As Nate succinctly put it on our march up the May Creek Road, lots of people talk about pushing your limits, but on the Classic, you find the point where your body will literally break if you do anything more. When we finished in McCarthy, our bodies were battered. But as demanding as the race was, it also empowered us in a way that can't really be described. We had just conquered 200 miles of Alaskan wilderness on foot in less than a week. I had successfully gotten my little brother across the entire Wrangell Mountains, and he was one of the youngest people to ever complete a wilderness classic. As I reflected on what we had accomplished, I remembered Jay's question back at Solo Mountain, if we had experienced our moment of transcendence. I realized that the answer was that we had. We had bonded together as brothers and brought each other through something so hard most people will never understand it. To people who don't understand the appeal of the Alaska Mountain Wilderness Classic, no explanation of it will ever make any sense. But to those who get it, no explanation will ever be needed. I personally find myself in the latter category, and for that reason, I know I will be back.